Welcome to the Justin Root Show, Episode 1, From Castle to Carol. Fun, a podcast. I have to say, I never really thought too much about branching my show out into this format, but here we are, and we can blame Carol Burnett for that. She is my very first podcast guest ever, and my intention with this episode is to tell you just exactly how that happened. And I'm really excited because in the spirit of Carol, this podcast series it's going to be full of variety, sort of a variety show podcast, minus the lavish musical numbers and the wonderful Bob Mackie costumes, unfortunately. But I'll be having interviews with people you know, with people you won't. Sometimes I'll tell stories, some my own. I've lived out here in Hollywood for, over 20 years now and have a lot of fun things to share and talk about. I'll be telling stories about Hollywood, the town and the industry. I'm honestly very excited to do this, but I'm going to be very honest. I am winging it. I have not really listened to that many podcasts. This world, it's new to me, but interviewing and storytelling is not. The Justin Root Show, it's lived on YouTube for a few years now. I started by talking to RuPaul on my pink sofa from home. And from him, I went on to interview over 40 people from all sorts of different genres. The only connection that any of them have is that they were all invited by me because I wanted them on. I asked them, they showed up. This show is about as bare bones as it gets, too. There's not a producer or a team of people booking it. I do it all myself, sometimes through friends who have helped me to get certain people. But if you're on, it's because I truly, really want you on. And if you're on, I'll be able to talk to you without any notes or blueprints. I mean, that's what happened with me and Belinda Carlisle from the Go-Go's, Tatum O'Neal, who is, I believe, still the youngest Oscar winner in history. I had on composer and lyricist Mark Shaman, who's actually an Oscar away from being an EGOT winner. I talked with Lisa Whelchel, who played Blair on The Facts of Life. I love comedians. I had on Jen Kirkman, Sarah Colonna, Selena Luna, Michelle Collins. I had on Juan Pablo de Pache. He played Fernando on Fuller House. Greg Reichart from Days of Our Lives and The Young and the Restless. Leland was on. He's a major songwriter. You know his stuff, trust me. He's also on Drag Race every now and then. Oh, I even talked to a woman who survived a serial killer. She was the only one of his victims to get away. Just a fascinating woman. I had on an NBA player, a straight male porn star, John Candy's daughter, a handful of the original Glow Girls, Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling, even a huge fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. So I had on Heather Langenkamp, Mark Patton, and all of the girls from my favorite one, Part 4. I mean, my interests, they are all over the place, but I absolutely love doing this, and I am really excited to pick it back up again, starting with Carol. Now, my show, it went in a different direction during initial lockdown of the pandemic. I couldn't sit and talk with anyone, and I refuse to do Zoom interviews. I don't like doing them, and I really don't like watching them. I'll only interview in person. It's really not up for discussion. No exceptions. So I had to put it all on the back burner. But since we were in lockdown, I just started taking walks all over mine and various neighborhoods here in LA, and I just started randomly showing places or homes that I find interesting and know something about, or, some from film and television. But I started getting a lot of responses and interest from people following me, so I just started doing more and more. And one of those people who saw them worked for The Hollywood Reporter, so they had me do a few for them on their Instagram handle. I did the locations from Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and I did one on horror movies that were shot here in LA. I just kept doing them, and they evolved into these grand scale documentary-sized videos that I call story location tours. They're stories told from the locations that pertain to them. I was having so much fun too. I love doing them. I did a 3-parter on one of my all-time favorite musical groups, Carpenters, Richard and Karen Carpenter. I did one on Sam Cooke. I did one on A Neighborhood, which was another 3-parter. It's called Whitley Heights, and it was the first celebrity neighborhood, long before Beverly Hills. I also have one on Hollywood's first murder mystery, one on the Miracle Mile, a neighborhood here in LA. I did one on Dirty Dancing, 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Again, my interest, they really run the gamut. I love a lot of different things, but there was one story location tour, definitely my biggest one, a 7-parter, but it's my personal favorite one. It's the one I did on Carol Burnett, and that is what has led us to where we are right now. I worked on it for several months. I put a lot of passion and work into it, but it was also just so much fun. I had the time of my life doing it because I was getting back in touch with the 18-year-old me who moved out here, the kid who fell in love with show business enough to actually move out here. And that too was because of Carol. Just blaming her for everything. It actually all started back in the 90s when I was attending Castle High School in Newburgh, Indiana. My family moved around a lot growing up. I was born and raised in Ohio until I was about 13. We lived in South Carolina for 2 years, and when I was 15, I became a Castle High School Knight. Mrs. Serling, she was my 10th grade, I think it was an advanced English class, I can't remember, but there was a speech component to the class, and I definitely know it was the only advanced class I ever took. Terrible at math, chemistry, science, yuck, but I killed English in speeches and drama class, of course. But I was obsessed with movies and TV and music. Oh, I cannot tell you how many magazines I would sneak behind my notebooks and textbooks during class, thinking my teachers couldn't see me reading. Oh my gosh, remember Movie Line magazine? There was Premiere. I would read every single page of Entertainment Weekly and Us, which too used to be weekly back then. Just obsessed with it all. And since the age of 12, I knew I wanted to be part of it, part of the entertainment business. But I was a dreamer. I had no idea how that was ever going to happen until Mrs. Serling ultimately changed my life. She told the class that we had to give a speech on a historical figure. She marched us all over to the school library and set us free to pick a person of our choice, and we had to base our speech from a book on that person. Well, I flew over to what I guess you could call the arts and entertainment section, which was basically like a shelf with, I don't know, like an old songbook, like sheet music, like an E.T. picture book, and a dusty puzzle. I don't know why, but I feel like there was even a Jane Fonda exercise book. Maybe I'm making that up. But the point is, the pickings were, they weren't there. But I did pick up a book, and I think it was because it was the only one with a cover, I'm not going to lie, but it was called One More Time, and it was by Carol Burnett. Now, I knew of her. My mom loved the Carol Burnett show. In fact, not that many years prior, our family watched the entire cast reunite for a CBS special. I was a little too young to appreciate it, but I remember it being a really big deal at home, especially since my dad's all-time favorite movie, The Four Seasons, starred Carol. And that was basically all I knew about her, which wasn't much. I don't even think I had put together yet that she was Miss Hannigan from Annie. But she was part of the entertainment world, and that was all I cared about. So there it was, my historical figure of choice. So I, along with the book, trotted past all of the other kids who were busy selecting books by, I don't know, Betsy Ross and President Warren G. Boring. No, thank you. So I showed Mrs. Serling my book, and I told her I was going back to the classroom to get started. Nope, she said, can't do that. I said a historical figure. Well, I told her, I said Carol was a historical figure, and she asked what kind, and I made something up. We went back and forth for a while until I'm sure she got sick of my shit and was just like, fine, sure, go ahead. So I began reading one more time, and it became more than just an assignment. I was falling in love with a dream, my dream. It was just unfolding right before me, page after page after page. Carol's book began as a letter to her 3 daughters, and it turned into the story of her life, from her beginning days in San Antonio, Texas, to moving out to Hollywood at 7, where she was raised in a one-room apartment with her hypochondriac grandma, who she called Nanny. It also traced the steps from grade school to high school to UCLA, and then to making a huge, terrifying plunge across country to New York to chase her dream. Well, after reading it, I knew that I too was going to move across country to chase mine, not to New York, but to Hollywood, the town she left, but the town that gave her her legacy. My life, it just started to make sense. I knew where I needed to go. Her book was a bridge to connect that dreamer's world to the real world. And I did, 3 years later, 5 days after graduating from Castle High School. Oh, and I also got an A on that speech. True story. And not only did I move to LA, but I moved here sight unseen. My dad flew out with me to co-sign a lease since I had no credit whatsoever, but after about a week of visiting, we headed home and I packed up and eventually, about a month later, made the drive across the country with my best friend Mike, who was still only 17. He and I met doing theater in Charleston, South Carolina, and we had remained best friends after my move to Indiana. Just instant soulmate friends. We loved all the same stuff, finished each other's sentences. If he watched it, I watched it. If I saw it, he saw it. So if I read it, he read it. He too read Carol's book and loved it. So when we first got here that summer, we checked out all the spots from her book: the apartment where she grew up, Hollywood High, CBS Television City, all of these places that I had read about and that I had thought about for 3 years were finally right in front of me. And as silly and as weird as this might sound, it just made me feel not that far from home. There was just such a comfort in seeing these places. I really can't explain it, but I just knew that I was where I was supposed to be. Mike's summer was up, however, and he had to go back and finish high school, and I was left by myself in a city where I did not know a single soul. But I never wanted to leave, and I haven't yet. I love it here. I love Hollywood, the town and the industry, and honestly, I'm unapologetic about it. Yeah, it has its bad side, its ugly side, its dark side, but it also has a fantastic side. It has a great side, and Carol Burnett, she's part of that great side. She represents the good in this business, and she's been an example of it since she started. There was this golden age to Hollywood, and Carol came along during it. She witnessed the growth of the industry, quite literally, as she grew up in the middle of it all. She's outlived several studios, restaurants, so much of this city's architecture, and she's outlived so many of its bright, shining stars. Her path has crossed with those of so many, just a ton of the most important players to ever make names for themselves in this town. She's a living link to a time that we're never going to see again. So it was important for me to, as a fan of her, as a fan of Hollywood, to make sure her story, her legacy would live on somewhere. I have always thought there should be a bio or a documentary made about her, so I thought, well, they won't make one, I will. I did, and I put it up on YouTube in September of 2022, and that was that. Until February 23rd, 2023. 5 months later, I opened Twitter and saw Jody Hamilton followed you, as well as a tweet from Jody that said, "Hi, my mom is Carol Burnett. She saw your videos about her on YouTube. DM me your info." I just stood there in shock. Carol saw my videos. But then I was like, oh my God, what if she wants me to take it down? What if it's a cease and desist? I mean, I had no idea what to think. But okay, first I do have to add a quick note because I'm still not 100% sure how it got to Carol. See, during the 5 months that it sat online, I had two really wonderful friends reach out to me. First, one of my closest friends, Jen Kirkman, who I mentioned was on this show, we were talking every single day during the pandemic, so she knew I was making this documentary, and when it was done, she actually watched it and left me a message telling me that she knew Carol's daughter and that she had sent it to her, Jody. But a few months went by, so I never really thought much of it after that, and then in the beginning of February, a friend of mine named Ben Roy, who I met years ago playing dodgeball, but who I hadn't spoken to in a while, randomly texted me out of the blue and said, "I just watched your Carol Burnett documentary. I loved it so much that I'm sending it to her assistant." I mean, I about fell out of my chair. He's a really successful producer, a solid, legit, wonderful guy. I didn't even know he knew Carol's assistant, and I still can't thank him enough. But 3 weeks went by and I, again, just sort of wasn't thinking about any of that. And then I got Jody's tweet. So anyway, I sent her my info to Jody, and I'm not kidding, minutes later, I had an email from Carol Burnett. I'm going to paraphrase. It just said, "Dear Justin, I'm absolutely amazed and flattered by your extensive documentary. I am so touched by all of it, your kind words, your kind thoughts." And then it was followed by a bunch of thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank yous. I really didn't know what to do. I think I cried. I think I laughed. I think I danced. I think I peed. It was just magic. I sat with it for about an hour before replying because the truth is, ever since I read her book, I knew in my heart, in my soul, I saw it, I visualized it, seeing myself sitting down, chatting with Carol. I had seen it for decades, and I knew it was going to happen one day. I never dreamed it would be because I was interviewing people. That really wasn't part of my initial dream. So it all came later, but it made sense. And I just knew that I had to invite Carol on my show. I knew that she was going to be the reason I started doing interviews again. I just felt it. So I thanked her for her email, and I heard RuPaul in my head. He once said to me, and I'm sure he says it to a lot of people, he's probably even said it on his show, but he once said to me, "You're never going to get a yes if you're afraid of a no." So I invited her on my show. I sent it, and I am not kidding you, my phone rang 10 minutes later. And I never pick up numbers I didn't know, but I just knew to pick this up. "Hi, this is Angie. I work for Carol Burnett." Okay. I mean, I was waiting for, if you ever ask something from Miss Burnett again, so help me, I will. But she wasn't. She was. Okay, listen, I have been out here for a long time. I cannot tell you how many celebrity assistants I have dealt with. I was one a few times, but Angie, oh my gosh, it really shouldn't come to anyone's surprise that Carol Burnett has a wonderful assistant. So sweet, so kind, so warm. She's just been a gem through all of this. Anyway, she went on to tell me that Carol got my email and that yes, she would love to do my show. And if that wasn't enough, she proceeded to say, "Oh, and there's going to be a 90th birthday special, a variety show honoring Carol next week in Hollywood, and she was wondering if you'd like to attend." I was like, It just depends what day. I mean, I could be busy. No, of course. Are you kidding? I mean, not only did she tell me that Carol would do my show, but now I'm being invited to Carol's birthday party. Well, she went on to tell me that it was a hugely sought-after event, lots of people were trying to get invited, and that it was all booked, but that Carol wanted me there, so they were going to try to squeeze me in. She even apologized for not giving me a +1. I was like, please, I will sit in the rafters, the control booth, the bathroom. I don't care. So the next thing I know, it's March 2nd, and I am on my way to meet Carol Burnett at her 90th birthday party. It was held at the historic Avalon Theater on Vine Street in Hollywood, which happened to be just 3 or 4 blocks from where Carol grew up, on the corner of Yucca and Wilcox. I featured so much of her apartment building in my documentary, and really it's one of the main characters in her book. So I decided to park in front of it and walk the few blocks. I felt, I don't know, it felt poetic. It felt special. I know that sounds so corny, but when I pulled up, there was naturally an available parking spot right in the front. So I knew that that was where I was supposed to be. So I walked from Carol's old apartment to the site of her star-filled 90th birthday party. It aired a few weeks later on NBC, so if you haven't watched it, I think you still can. It's probably on Peacock. Anyway, I turned the corner onto Vine Street, and I couldn't believe my eyes. There was an entire street full of fans waiting to catch a glimpse of Carol and all of her guests. There were lights, paparazzi, a red carpet. It was an event. I mean, it should be. I was just so happy to see that fanfare for it. I walked right up to the will call table where I knew that my ticket was waiting for me, and I gave the lady my name, and she gave me one of those, I don't see your name. Let me try another list. And she kind of moved away from her area for a second, and I'm thinking, oh, great, too good to be true. But while she stepped away, I hear, is this where we get our tickets? And I look, and it was Susan Lucci. I don't even watch All My Children. I'm a Days of Our Lives guy, but who doesn't know Susan Lucci? And of course, I knew how much Carol loves All My Children. She was even a guest star on it, but I was just like, yeah, the lady went, she'll be right. But the lady came right back, and I'm not kidding. She said, sorry about that. I didn't realize you were sitting at the family table. She hands me my little ticket with my table number on it, and Susan looks at me like, well, fancy you, have fun. And you just can't make this up. I turned to walk away, and I ran smack into Bernadette Peters. But it was one of those both of our fault sort of bump-ins, and we were both like, oh, I'm so sorry. It was just wild. It was crazy. So I walked into the lobby, the reception area of the theater, and it was just filled with Carol photos all over the walls. I about lost it. It just kept hitting me what was happening. But before I could cry, I was offered a glass of champagne, which I took, and the first person I saw inside was my friend Ben Roy. Now, I had obviously been chatting with him since Carol had reached out to me and invited me. I have been thanking him profusely for sending Angie my documentary, but the last thing he knew was that they were trying to, quote, squeeze me in somewhere. So he comes up to me, gives me a huge hug, and says, Justin, I am so sorry. I tried so hard to get them to move you to my table. I just couldn't make it happen. Where are they sticking you? I was like, Ben, you're not going to believe this, but the lady at will call said, I'm sitting at the family table. Ben about lost his mind. We were dying. We were laughing so hard. I said to him, I would have killed you if you had got me moved to your table. Anyway, it was so great seeing him. He was there as a fan. He's a producer, like I said, but he was not working the event. He said he was there because He wanted to be there. And in fact, that was the entire vibe of the entire night. Everyone felt like that. This wasn't an award show. There wasn't any competition. It wasn't like a networking event. It was a celebration of someone we all love. It was filled with A-listers, some of the biggest names in the world. And, you know, they let their guard down. They were just there to celebrate Carol. Anyway, after chatting with Ben, I went into the main theater and I found my table. It was dead center. And there were just 3 empty chairs. And I could tell that no one had sat down yet, so I was not going to be the first one there. I took another loop around the theater, and I checked Twitter, and I had a message from Jody saying, "Looks like we're sitting together tonight. Yay!" So while I was waiting for Jody to get, settled at the table first, I was walking around, and luckily I ran into a couple people that I knew. One of them is Katy Perry's manager, and he told me he was there as a fan. He had, asked Katy to be her +1. And honestly, again, everyone was there for Carol, and it showed. You could feel it. Finally, I hear Justin, and I turn, and it was Carol's daughter, Jody. Could not have been kinder. She flew into this big hug. We were both so excited to meet each other. She said, "Here's our table, me, you, and Lonnie." Now, Lonnie is her husband. They've been together for years, and he was just as sweet and kind. Jody said, "Mom called me a couple days ago and asked me, 'Honey, do you mind if Justin sits with you at the party?' And I said, 'Yes, I was thrilled.'" Just hearing Jody tell me that, it relaxed me so much. I felt so at ease, especially since there was a good half hour or so before the show. And in that half hour, it was so fun getting to know Jody, talking to her and watching her. She'd be like, "Aunt Vicky," before jumping up to go greet Vicki Lawrence. I mean, she knew everyone. They knew her. And she was so gracious and thoughtful enough to introduce me to whoever came up to our table. Really a class act all the way. And finally, the show starts, and it was run impeccably. You would have never even known that you were at something that was being filmed. It was like you were at a 2-hour party that just happened to be at a theater and happened to be on TV. It was a masterful production. I mean, it later won the Emmy for Outstanding Variety Special, rightfully so. And the show began with an introduction about Carol's life. Then they introduced Carol Burnett with her chum, Julie Andrews, as the two of them entered from offstage, taking their seats just a few feet from our table. I about lost it. And I think what struck me the most was how great they both looked, how quick they moved, how effortlessly they walked to their seats. When, you hear 90 years old, you just kind of expect 90. And there was just nothing 90 about her. So there we all were, standing, clapping, crying for this legend. And I don't need to tell you about the show itself. You can watch it and see all the presenters and the performers. But it did have commercial breaks, and those are where all the exciting things for me happened. That's when everyone, would get up, go to the bathroom, or mingle for, 2 minutes or so. So during the first one, Jody, Lonnie, and I got up and we went our separate ways and returned in time for the next segment. Well, when that segment was over and we had our second commercial break, Jody says to me, "Did you meet Mom yet?" As in maybe I went and said hi or something during the first commercial break. I said, "No, not yet." And Jody, I'm not kidding, grabs my arm and says, "Come on, let's go." Oh my God, now? And look, I didn't know when or if I was even going to meet Carol. I had hoped to, but I had no idea what to expect. And not only that, but during the first commercial break, it seemed like everyone went up to Carol's table. I certainly had no intention of meeting her during it, not during a commercial break, but here I was being led by Jody, and we get to Carol's she and Julie, they were sitting at this, it's almost like a love seat just for the two of them. So we're approaching them from behind. Jody did that thing where she leaned over her mom, sort of kind of kissing her on the top of the head, leaning to the side saying hello. And I hear Carol say to her, "Oh, hi, sweetie," as she kissed Jody's hand. And before Jody could get the words out, she said, "Mom, look who I have." But before she could finish, Carol and I caught eyes, and I will remember this and will hear this for the actual rest of my life. Carol shrieked, she gasped and said, Oh, you made it, you're here." Jody kind of threw her arms up like, "Well, you don't need me anymore," and excused herself and let me have time with her mom. And I'm going to be obnoxious here, but it's a detail that I want to include. I watched people go up to Carol during that first commercial break, and she just stayed in her seat, took her visit graciously, and that was that. But with me, she actually got up, turned to face me, and she took both of my hands in hers and said, "What you have done, what you have made, it's been a minute since I watched it all, and I still don't have the words. I don't know what to say." And I kid you not, Julie Andrews, who I even forgot was sitting right there, overheard us, and she chimed in with an aside. Carol, speechless? It was all so quick, I barely acknowledged it, but I had my opening line ready to Carol because, as you know, I was obsessed with her book and especially obsessed with Nanny, her grandma, who of course is the reason Carol tugs on her ear. So I said, that's okay. I'm equally speechless because I can't believe I finally get to meet the granddaughter of Mabel Eudora White, which is Nanny's real name. Well, I think she was stunned. I don't think anyone has ever said that to her. So she threw her head back, she laughed, and then she got so excited to say, "Well, you're in luck because there are two of us. There's another one right behind you." And it was Carol's sister, Chrissy. I am not joking when I tell you that Chrissy was who I wanted to meet most after Carol and Jody, truly, more than anyone else at that party, because like Nanny, Chrissy is also a huge part of Carol's life and was a major part of the book. These characters, well, they're not characters. They're real life people in a book that I've just loved for decades. And there they were, two of them in front of me together. And I actually just stepped back because it was Chrissy's first time greeting Carol that night. So I wanted the two of them to have their moment. And I knew that we had to take our seats pretty soon. So I just returned to the table, and Jody was like a fan when I returned. She was so giddy and excited. "How did it go? Are you okay? Was everything good?" I just said, "Jody, it was perfect. She's perfect. She's just perfect." We watched the rest of the show, and Jody would lean over from time to time during the clips or whatnot, and she would tell me little stories or anecdotes. "That was the first time Mom saw Harvey in his costume," or, "Oh, that was one of Mom's favorite guest stars." Just, really cute little things like that just made me feel so welcome. It was so unbelievably refreshing, too. I know a handful of relatives of celebrities, and not all of them really embrace the fame. They might shy away from it or might try to downplay it, but really not Jody. And it's what I love most about her. She's a fan of her mom. She loves her so much, and she seemed just as excited as I was. So much so that when the show was over, Jody asked me if I got a photo with Carol, and I said, "Oh no, I'd love one, but I didn't want to ask. Wasn't sure if it was okay." And again, before I knew it, Jody is dragging me by the arm back to Carol's seat. However, now Carol was absolutely bombarded. The show was over and everyone wanted a picture. Everyone. Charlize Theron was getting selfies. Katy Perry was trying. Everyone was just gathered around her. So Jody, she's like, excuse us, Mama, can Justin get a photo?" "He better," Carol shrieked. We're literally cutting off Bob Odenkirk and Kristen Wiig as we're moving through the crowd, but Jody, she knew exactly what she was doing because everyone just waited for it to happen. And Carol was so sweet about it. She even turned us to be in the proper lighting. She really took her time with me, and she also took my hands again. And she kind of turned us away from everyone, and she said, "You know where we are, right? You know what's just a few blocks from us?" And I said, "You mean the apartment building where you grew up?" And she nodded, and I said, "Carol, of course I know. Where do you think I parked?" And she said, "No, you didn't." And I said, "I had to. There was no choice." And she gave me a really big hug. And when she pulled back, she said to me, and I quote, because I will never forget this as long as I live, but she said to me, "So this special, it's going to air in a few weeks, actually on my birthday. Until then, I am just absolutely swamped. But after it airs, I am going to go on the Justin Root Show." The best way that I can describe that feeling is by equating it to winning the lottery. Say you win $10 million, and in the middle of your high from that, you find out that you won another lottery somewhere. She said the name of my show to me. She didn't say, "I'm going to do your show," or, "Oh, and we're going to do your interview." She said, "I am going to come on the Justin Root Show." Do you know how far that extra personal touch goes for someone like me? And I wish you could have seen it, because she came up with it all herself. It wasn't like in The Devil Wears Prada where Anne Hathaway would whisper and tell Meryl Streep who was about to approach them. No, Carol was on her own. In fact, Angie wasn't standing there. I hadn't even met Angie yet. There was no one giving Carol a heads up who was coming up to her. Carol said and remembered the name of my show all by herself. The name of my show, after spending 2 hours with Cher and Julie and Lily Tomlin, all of these legends, all of these huge important people. And I'm sorry, this is not me bragging. None of this is me bragging. I'm telling you all of this because it's just such a testament to the strength of Carol's character. Well, we hugged goodbye. I said my goodbyes to Jody, to Lonnie, to Ben, and I mingled a little bit afterwards. I took photos with Vicki Lawrence and Bob Mackey. I had to. Both just absolutely terrific. Bob, he even complimented the little scarf I had in my suit pocket, which just another lottery win. And when I told Vicki why I was there and how Carol invited me, she said, "That's Carol." And I mean, who better than Vicki Lawrence to understand being invited somewhere by Carol? Oh, this was so cute. On my way out, I hear Chrissy say to me, "Oh, honey, will you take a quick photo of us?" And I turn, and she was with Maya Rudolph. Chrissy, fangirling over Maya Rudolph. It was adorable. I took their pic, and then I took one with Chrissy, who I think was genuinely shocked that I wanted her photo. Which, by the way, you can see all of these on my Instagram, The Justin Root Show. I'm also in the process of getting a website up. But, before I left that party, on my way out, Angie found me. She had a headset on. Clearly, she had been working the event. But it was so nice to meet her in person. And she reiterated what Carol had said and told me to reach out after the special aired, which was on Carol's birthday, April 26th. So I went home after the party. I don't even think, I know I didn't sleep that night. I was on such a high. And then the next morning, I wake up to more messages on Twitter from people telling me that Jody Hamilton was on the Stephanie Miller show that morning talking all about Carol's birthday party the night before, and that Jody had mentioned me. I couldn't believe it. It just all kept getting better and better. I'm just going to play you the clip. This is Jody on the Stephanie Miller show.
Well, you had a busy few days.
Yeah.
I did.
Your mommy had a birthday party.
A birthday party.
An early birthday party.
An early birthday party because her birthday is next month on the 26th.
And they need time to edit her birthday party.
They need to edit the birthday party. Actually, it was really well done, by the way. They shot it as if it were a live show.
Live to tape.
Well, like they used to do your mom's show.
Exactly. And once I heard who the director was, I'm like, yeah, we're going to shoot this really quickly.
Yeah.
Because he knows what he's doing. But they took only like 2 breaks in the 2 hour.
Okay.
2 hours, and it was tables.
Right. It was a gala.
It was a gala. Mm-hmm. And it was really, 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 really well done. I was
Very cool.
thoroughly impressed.
I can't wait to see it.
I know, looking forward to seeing it.
It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
All sorts
And
of people.
we should
were
we should
there.
let people know what it's called, when it will air.
Carol Burnett 90th birthday something on NBC.
Okay.
April 26th. It's going to air on NBC, and Cher was there,
All right.
which was awesome.
And who was sitting next to your mom?
Aunt Julie. Sorry,
And what's her full name?
Julie Andrews.
Okay.
She's known my mom longer than I've known my mom, so
Yeah.
that's why she was sitting
That's
next
fair.
to her.
Yeah.
And it was a really lovely. I mean, the how they set it up, because it was at the Avalon, which used to be the Palace
Right.
here in Hollywood.
Uh-huh.
And they had the stage beautifully, and all these pictures kept
Yeah.
changing. It was just really lovely, and I mean, like I said, Julie was there. Bernadette Peters performed twice.
Wow.
Billy Porter.
Wow.
Darren Criss.
Yep.
Like I said
Was
earlier.
Randy Rainbow there?
He did not make it.
Oh, no.
Wow, I'm surprised.
Oh.
He was supposed to be there, but I think work prevented him from
Okay.
flying in.
Okay.
Because I was like, why is Rand? Because when I saw him, he was like, I'll see you in March.
Because your mom's a big fan of his, and he's a big fan of your mom.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And she discovered a gentleman by the name of Justin Root,
Okay.
who did a bunch. Jen Kirkman is friends with him.
Okay.
And so I sent my mom his videos about her.
Right.
His 7-part series. He knows more about my mom, I think, than my mom does.
Well,
And,
I'm sure a lot of people do.
No, but I mean, he literally like videotapes everything, right?
Okay.
And so I sent her a video that Jen sent me months ago.
Uh-huh.
And a week ago, she goes, honey, I know you sent this to me a long time ago, but can I get in touch with Mr. Root? And I'm like, I will see what I can do.
Okay.
And so I emailed him on the Twitters, because
Yeah.
he follows me, and so I could. And I said, hi, I don't know if you know who my mom is, but she loves your videos. And he went, I know who your mom is. And I said, and she would like to get in touch with you. Do you have a phone number or email? And he's like, okay. And so he gave me
gave
his
both?
information, and then I sent it to my mom. And then the day before, on Wednesday last week, my mom emails me. She goes, Justin is going to sit with you at the show.
Oh.
And so he was just fun, first off. And his
I
videos are
think I
amazing.
saw a tweet about that or something, like a photo with you and him.
Justin, yeah. And the second break that we had during the show, I was like, have you met my mom yet? And he goes, no, I haven't. I mean, I'm like, well, come with me.
You take him by the elbow.
Come with me, And I said, Mom, this is Justin. She goes, oh my God,
Yeah.
And then when the show ended, I said, did you get a picture with my mom yet? He goes, no, I don't want to ask. I said, get over
Yeah.
here. Come on. And he was excited to meet my Aunt Chrissy.
Oh.
He's like, I love your aunt. I can't wait to meet her, And it was just, he was a dear.
Also, Jody, you're talented as well.
Thank you. But no, I mean, he was just so sweet to say. It was me and Lonnie and Justin. I had the best table.
Yeah. That's
and
awesome.
it was a really lovely evening, and it was just lovely.
Yeah.
Marissa Tomei was there. She was very funny. Maya Rudolph was there.
Kristen
her.
Chenoweth was there.
Kristen Chenoweth, who I adore.
We all adore.
And she's this big.
She's tiny. She's
She
tiny.
makes Susan Lucci look tall.
Yeah.
But it was Michelle Obama.
Wow.
She said happy birthday
Via tape.
via tape.
Yeah.
But it was very nice.
That's so cool.
I mean, what an endorsement. Sheesh, this family, they are just the best. Anyway, the birthday party aired a couple months later on Carol's birthday, and that was such a fun night because all sorts of family and friends were reaching out to me, sending screenshots of their TV because they spotted me sitting behind Carol throughout the special. It just was so much fun reliving it again. But anyway, a couple days after it aired, I called Angie to set up our interview. Now, I have to say, I had been visualizing it forever and was ready to go if Angie was like, Carol could do it tomorrow. But I was a little thrown when she said that Carol was not up for an on-camera interview at the time. And look, I completely understand the reason why, and I will just leave it at that. I wasn't upset at all. I was just caught off guard because that was the only way I had ever interviewed anyone. Like I said, I've never done Zoom. I've never done phone call. I'm not a journalist. So I don't write anything down. So Angie went on, do you have a podcast? Would you maybe like to start one? I honestly, I never had a desire really, but I blurted out to her, "Yeah, I'll get one. Yes, let's do it. A podcast. Yes, this is it. We're gonna do it." So we set a time and place, and I had about 3 weeks to get everything for a podcast. I mean, it was full steam ahead, and I was not going to let this chance pass me by. No way. So, I have to mention one of my dearest friends, Jason Berkowitz, who does his own podcasting. He's a whiz at it, so he walked me through everything I needed to know about traveling with a podcast and how to set it up once I got to Carol, and he lent me some of his equipment until I got my own. And I practiced the night before by going over to his place and rehearsing a setup. It was great. I was confident and ready for May 18th when I went to the Peninsula Hotel in Beverly Hills to have my 1-hour sit down with Carol Burnett in her suite. She actually lives in the Santa Barbara, Montecito area now, but was in town and invited me there. On my way, I stopped at Bristol Farms Grocery. It used to be Chasen's restaurant. I actually featured that too in my Carol Burnett story location tour, but I went there and got a bouquet of flowers, and I added a special bird of paradise to it because that was Carol's daughter, Carrie's favorite flower, and Carol talks a lot about that, so I wanted her to have one of those. And about 10 minutes before I was supposed to be there, I pull into the valet at the Peninsula, pop the back, and grab my rollaway, my show on wheels, and headed into the lobby. I texted letting Carol and Angie know that I was there, and all I could think of while I was waiting for Angie to come down and get me was I was watching all the people who were checking in to their rooms, not yet knowing that they're potentially going to be passing a national treasure later on their way to the vending machine. No, the Peninsula does not have vending machines, or probably even ice machines. I'm sure they have ice people. They just bring it to their room. I don't know. But anyway, Angie, she came down within 2 minutes, and again, she's just great. She has this very calming, safe presence about her. Sometimes assistants can be frazzled, rightfully so, but they can have this, chaotic energy, and Angie she's not that at all. So sweet. We got off the elevator, and it's that rich, quiet hotel, that quiet that's only found in the nicest of hotels, unlike any other hallway anywhere. So I felt like the wheels on my rollaway were just a horse and buggy on cobblestone. I mean, one was squeaking. It felt so loud. So I did that thing where you pick it up off the floor, so the wheels just sort of graze the carpet. So we finally get to the door of this suite, and as Angie pushed it open, I see Carol sitting at this little writing desk facing us, and when she saw us, she closed her laptop and stood up and yelled, "Mr. Root!" To which I yelled back, "Ms. Burnett!" And she just had this big, warm smile and said, "No, call me Carol." And I said, "Okay, but call me Mr. Root still." And she cracked it. There's nothing like hearing that really big Carol Burnett guffaw when she's just, it's just the best. She showed me where to put the flowers and, of course, acknowledged the bird of paradise, which I think touched her. And I told her that they were from Bristol Farms, the old Chasens, and she was just over the moon about it because Chasens was where the cast and crew would celebrate after each taping of the Carol Burnett show. So we had that little moment, and she gave me the nicest, just warmest, biggest hug, and I was just so at home, so comfortable. Until I had to unpack. Everything just felt so different. All of the equipment that I had practiced with suddenly felt different. It felt heavier, bigger, more intrusive. It was a mess. It was a mess. And these mic stands, they're so solid. They're made of like rock. And the table, I mean, it's the peninsula. The table's all of the furniture. It's beautiful. It's wooden. It's nice. You can kind of feel like you're in a museum. And I'm just lowering each stand so delicately, so nervously. I don't want to scratch anything. And the cords, they felt heavier than they did at home and thicker and bigger. And they're just like hanging off the table onto the nice cream color carpeting. Then I couldn't find an outlet. I mean, there are just like, it felt like there were drapes everywhere. Like the outlets were just covered. It wasn't good. So I just, I took a breath and I said to Carol, you know that episode of I Love Lucy where she's pregnant and the four of them rehearse and walk themselves through what will happen the day Lucy goes into labor, and then the day Lucy goes into labor, it's all a mess? She knew it right away and she nodded and she looked at me and she said, "Are you in labor right now?" I held up some tangled cords and said, "Yep, sure am." And she said, "Oh, good. I'm just going to sit here and watch then." It just was so good. It was so funny. She knew what to say. Suddenly, right then, it just felt okay. Things came untangled and it was all working out. And in the final minutes of setup, she said, "Oh, you'll get a kick out of this. After our interview, I'm going to dinner with Vicky." As in Vicki Lawrence, or if you're Jody, Aunt Vicky. I didn't even pretend to hide my delight, and she got a kick out of me, getting a kick out of it. It was just great. I was ready, and it was showtime. Just me and Carol Burnett and two giant heavy microphones. And people asked me if I was nervous. I was only, nervous about setting up, not ever nervous about talking with her, not at all. In fact, after our little banter and the little I Love Lucy joke, all that, I was more than ready. So I hit record and off we went. I didn't have a plan or a strategy. You can't. There are 90 years worth of stories. I wouldn't even know where to begin if I tried to plan out the perfect interview. I just wanted to talk about the things I loved about her and the moments from her life that interested me, and I just hoped for the best. I mean it when I say I could not be more proud of the way it turned out. I loved every single moment of it, and you can hear it all for yourself, how it all played out. And on top of my own love for it, Carol and Angie, they said the absolute nicest things to me when it was over. But as if it wasn't already perfect, on my way out, Carol said to me, well, I have to go back for a second. In our interview, we talked about a movie that her daughter, Carrie Hamilton, starred in, Tokyo Pop. She mentioned that they restored it and that there was going to be a screening. So on my way out, Carol says, "Oh, and I'll let you know when the Tokyo Pop screening is if you want to go." If I want to go. I just couldn't believe that there I was, leaving with another date to look forward to. And unlike most times when you leave someone's hotel suite with the promise of a future date, this one actually happened. Later that summer, Tokyo Pop, it screened at the Chinese Six next to Grauman's, where Carol grew up, comparing her small hands and feet to the celebrities who placed theirs in the cement out front. It was just another wonderful night with Carol. Tokyo Pop, it wasn't a hit here, but it's a cult classic. It did very well in Japan, and now it has a restored re-release. And like I said, Carol's daughter Carrie starred in it, and she passed away in 2002. She's just magical in it. She lights up the screen in all the right ways. I mean, she was the first Marine in Rent. It's all in my story location tour, and I talked about it with Carol in our interview. And they even introduced Carol before the film. It was just a very special night. And after the movie, the birthday party, my interview with Carol, it's all public, so it feels okay to talk about, but I don't want to cross any lines or anything because I was so fortunate enough to get to hang out with just Carol, Jody, Lonnie, and Chrissy afterwards. They were all at the screening, and the best part, Mike, my best friend who I told you about, he happened to be out here visiting, and he was with us too. And honestly, we weren't sure. We didn't know what was going to happen at the movie or how long we'd have with her. But when it was over, she invited us out, and I still can't believe it. And look, I want to keep it private because it was just a very intimate, very emotional, very vulnerable night. I couldn't imagine what it must have been like losing a child and then having to be somewhere that she should also be part of. But I do want to tell you, I don't think Carol would mind if I told you this. We were all leaving the theater and we had to walk through, it's just this giant outdoor mall that's next to the Chinese theater, if you've never seen it. And it's public. People were recognizing Carol, and there was security from the theater walking with us, and we're up high on this top floor. It looks out all over Hollywood. We're outside walking to the elevator, and Carol stops our little group and says, "Justin, come here." And she grabs my arm. We walk over, and she points to, oh, I wish you could see the goosebumps on my arms right now. She points to Hollywood High School, the high school where she went, the high school where there's a giant mural with her face on it. And it's in what's called Carol Burnett Square. It was a moment. It was a moment. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. But anyway, our interview. So after it was all said and done, they asked me to hold off posting it until they went on a press blitz for Carol's new show on Apple, Palm Royale, which I thought was great because that would give me some time to accrue some episodes and really get ready. Well, the entire industry went on strike. Actors, writers, it was a mess. No one was allowed to do interviews or podcasts, so back to the back burner it all went. I went on and made some more story location tours for YouTube, but now that everyone's back and Palm Royale is out, we are good to go. I'm so excited. I really am. I'm still going to be on YouTube, still going to do the story location tours, but anytime I interview anyone, it will be here and YouTube as well. So please make sure you check out my channel. And if you haven't, please subscribe. That really helps me out. And I'm very active over on Instagram, The Justin Root Show. I'm going to also be starting up my Facebook page again, same name there. And of course, keep checking back here for more episodes. The very next one will finally be the Carol Burnett interview. I'm so excited. I think you're really, really going to love it. So until then,